When I first got sick, people told me that I was gonna have to live this way forever, that I would just have to make myself comfortable and accept a life of pain. Their words stirred something in me, not because I felt good or had the stamina to keep enduring, but because I knew innately that I was capable of healing. And in my darkest hours, fighting pain, I clung to this thought, knowing that I am capable. And now that's what I do every single day. VitalSight is a path to discovering how to make changes to your brain, to your symptoms, and to your life. I hope you stay for my story, knowing this information has changed my life, and it could change yours too. I'm Lindsay Mitchell. I have a background working in medicine, and I'm the founder of VitalSight. VitalSight is an organized brain retraining protocol designed for you if you're struggling with chronic and persistent symptoms to get you to the place where you're feeling energized and your body and brain are working for you. I don't know the intricacies of why you're here. It could be because you found yourself unable to leave your bed because of persistent fatigue, or maybe you noticed work and life balance have been excruciating to figure out due to constant pain. Whatever the reason, today we are going to define why you have these persistent symptoms and why other modalities of treatment haven't been as effective as you'd hoped. When you finish watching this video today, your brain will not be the same. For the next 30 minutes or so, let's put focus on you so you can be empowered and motivated to learn about your brain's very own healing properties. If your life has been disrupted by chronic illness or persistent stress, then this video is especially for you. You're experiencing anxiety, fatigue, food sensitivities, brain fog, and pain daily. You've tried all the options, from medications to heavy detox remedies. You've been diagnosed with a thyroid condition, mold or heavy metal toxicities, Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, depression, or another chronic condition that has wreaked havoc on your life. You've seen countless practitioners who have told you to make yourself comfortable, that you have to live with these symptoms for the rest of your life. Or maybe you're someone who always feels tired, even when you wake up. Your fatigue comes and goes, and it changes when exposed to stressful events throughout the day. Or perhaps you notice other symptoms of stress, like your heart beating fast, dizziness when you stand up, or random, unexplained bouts of pain. If you can relate to this person, you're in the right place. And even if you've been told otherwise, this is not all in your head. And if you already relate to this picture of someone dealing with chronic and persistent symptoms, and you're ready to learn how you can heal and regain control of your life, then let's schedule a Zoom call now, because your life can change, your symptoms can change, and it starts with the brain. In this video, my goal is to tell you my story of chronic illness, review how the brain changes when in a state of chronic stress, and to help you understand the healing properties of the brain. When I first got sick, I thought my story was so unique. I had heard of Lyme disease while living on the East Coast when I got my master's degree in physician assistant studies. So when I was told that this was my diagnosis, and I not only had Lyme disease, but other debilitating viruses and bacteria that were plaguing my body, I was devastated. But even before this diagnosis, I knew something wasn't right. When I was about 8 years old, I was constantly under stress for about 6 months. During that time, I was mentally and physically abused by a caregiver. So from that young age, my primary response was stress. I had to stay and fight, run away, or freeze up and hide from the situation. At the time, this was a necessary response for me. It helped me survive. But when we moved and that person was no longer in my life, that state of chronic stress or survival remained. And I could tell because my stomach was extremely sensitive, and I was diagnosed with acid reflux followed by Epstein-Barr virus. So I wasn't ever a well child, but after a lot of therapy, I was mentally flourishing and was happy, but my body was still responding like I was in danger. Then, after working with toxic substances in a research lab, traveling to rural areas during PA school, and being exposed to viruses regularly when working as a travel PA, it was no surprise that I got sick quite frequently. But when I was bitten by a tick in the redwoods, my health declined rapidly in just a matter of months. And at first I blamed it on the jet lag from frequent traveling, but I soon realized that it was something deeper, much deeper. I went through the frustration of seeking out a diagnosis, and when I finally got one, I tried absolutely everything to recover. And there are so many incredible modalities to healing. We were overwhelmed with the options. But with my background in Western medicine, I started there and went through each avenue of healing, which finally led me to the brain. It was then that I finally understood that it really wasn't my body that needed help and healing, it was my brain. I learned the healing properties of the brain, and I understood that I'd been operating from the sympathetic response or chronic stress response, otherwise known as fight or flight, for most of my life. And it was time to change that primary response. So after learning mental exercises and specific techniques that I could use to calm that stress response and change my associations to the not so dangerous environment around me, I let go of the fear that I was attached to. I let go of the person who I identified with, the illness, and I encouraged my body to work for itself again. And I learned how the brain is changing, reorganizing all the time. Every behavior changes the brain, no matter what age you are. And we can make changes even after damage has been done to the brain and the body. For you watching this video right now, I want you to know 2 things. Number 1, you are not alone. And number 2, you can calm the stress response, change your symptoms, and change your life. And to understand the second part of this, it's necessary to learn how the brain changes. So let's dive into the basics of your brain's stress response to learn some practical advice on how you can make beneficial changes to your brain today. I'm here to talk to you today about this cornerstone of medical treatment, neuroplasticity, which just means the brain's ability to change. This is something that's been around for hundreds of years, but it hasn't been until the last couple of decades that it's been well studied. We'll also be talking about neurogenesis, which is the birth of new neurons in the brain. Neurons are just basic brain cells that transmit information all throughout the body. These concepts have been used to treat cardiovascular diseases, cognitive issues, strokes, and other neurological disorders. But it hasn't been until the last couple of decades that neuroplasticity has been used in the treatment of chronic diseases. Things like fibromyalgia, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, PTSD, and other illnesses that fall under this umbrella term called limbic system hypersensitivity. And we'll talk a little bit more about what this means later on. Before we go ahead and dive in, I just want to remind you that you are not your illness. You are just like everyone else with a few extra struggles. That doesn't make you weak. It just makes you a fighter. Despite what you've had to deal with, you are still here. You have a purpose and a mission. You are smart, funny, compassionate, and loving. You are not your diagnosis. And this is not your story. This is just part of it. And if you can take one thing home today, it's to become a non-judgmental observer of yourself. And by this, I mean letting go of any judgments you've had about your diagnosis, your symptoms, and your current treatments. During today's session, we'll be going over ways that your brain is constantly changing. We'll also be talking about neuroplasticity and how it relates to the limbic system. And the last thing we'll be going over is how all of these concepts can actually help you to heal. So let's start out by looking at these images. And what do these images bring to mind? Maybe things like happiness, joy. And how do these images make you feel? People typically say they make me feel relaxed, at ease. Maybe you smile. So these are the emotions behind the visuals. Your brain is processing this laughter and joy. And contrary to what many people believe, laughter isn't just a learned reaction. It's an instinctive behavior that's programmed into our genes. There was a study done by the University of Oxford in 2011 that proved that laughter actually decreases stress hormones, things like adrenaline and cortisol, and releases endorphins. These endorphins are proven to reduce physical pain and boosts the number of antibody-producing cells, which leads to an enhanced immune function. Laughing is just one example of how we can make changes to our physical bodies through the induction of an emotion. Laughter is also initiated in the limbic system, and this is the part of the brain we'll be focused on today. Now let's watch this short video to learn the basics behind neuroplasticity.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
We know that our brains are essentially plastic, much like Play-Doh, just very malleable. And this isn't a good or a bad thing, but it's a constant. Our brains are constantly changing based on our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. With this information, we can actually learn how to control our brain functions, reshape our pathways, and rewire our brains. The goal of VitalSide is to use this information along with concepts from epigenetics, quantum physics, neurology, and psychology to help rewire the brain and eventually heal the body. There was a study done at Harvard Medical School where 17 volunteers were asked to learn a 5-finger piano exercise, something much like this. Half of the volunteers were asked to play as fluidly as they could for 2 hours a day for 5 days. The second half of the volunteers were asked to just think about the exercise while keeping their hand still for the same amount of time. Before, during, and after the study, both groups underwent a transcranial magnetic stimulation test, which measures electric currents in the brain. In both groups, the stretch of the motor cortex devoted to these 5-finger exercises took over the surrounding area. From this study, we learned that mental training actually has the ability to make physical changes to the brain. This is because thinking about performing any act actually can activate mirror neurons, which creates neuroplastic changes within the brain. And from this study, we also learned that the brain does not distinguish between real and imagined exercise. In VitalSide, we use techniques like mental exercise to actually access those mirror neurons in the retraining process. When you use these techniques that I teach you in VitalSide and repeat them every day, you're actually able to make changes to the brain that then make changes to your physical symptoms, your emotional behavior, and your organ functions. For example, you can see changes to your physical symptoms, things like headaches, joint and muscle pain, numbness and tingling. You can also see changes in your emotional behavior, like anxiety or mood. And you can also see changes in your organ functions, things like hormonal imbalances, hypo or hypertension, problems of the central nervous system, and your detox capabilities. VitalSide specifically designs a plan for you based on your diagnoses, your symptoms, and how you're wanting to improve. Now let's get down to basics. So how does the brain really function? Let's take a look at this short video and learn some basics about the brain.
The brain is the most fascinating part of the human body. Not much to look at, it resembles a spongy mass of tissue, feels like tofu, and weighs roughly 4 tubs of butter. Our brain is actually made up of mostly water and about 10% fats. While our brain only makes up approximately 2% of the entire body's weight, it uses a massive 20% of the body's energy. The brain's basic building blocks are known as neurons, and we have around 100 billion of these, each with between 1,000 to 10,000 connections to other neurons, creating neural pathways or roads within the brain. There are literally trillions of neural connections within the brain. Similar to a city's electrical power grid, information is passed along these roads through a series of chemical messages and electrical impulses. As all of this activity takes place, our brain generates between 10 to 25 watts of power, enough to power a light bulb. Over the course of one day, your brain generates more electrical impulses from firing neurons than all of the telephones in the world. So really, your brain isn't just a spongy mass of tissue. It's your most complex organ, a power station that connects your every thought, movement, and feeling. And it's firing right now.
So what makes the brain vital? A typical response to this is, well, you can't live without it, or if you did live without it, you'd be brain dead. This is true, but why? When someone is brain dead, there's a lack of reflexive responses that occurs at the brainstem, one of the most fundamental structures of the brain that's responsible for all sorts of vital functions. Apart from being a major organ and basically keeping you alive, the brain is responsible for helping you move around the environment in a useful way. In our brains, we store patterns of neural activity that create sensations, perceptions, cognitions, and many other important processes. It simply makes you, you. What you do on a daily basis determines what neural pathways you take, which determines your experiences of life. When chronic illness occurs from some sort of physical, mental, or emotional trauma, your fight or flight mechanism takes over because of that high amount of stress. When we are constantly dealing with a trauma, our fight or flight mechanism can stay heightened, whether we need it to or not. And this is called a chronic stress response. We can get stuck in this chronic stress response when we're chronically ill, but by rewiring our brains, we're actually able to go from that fight or flight response to growth and repair. Now I always like to give the example of seeing a bear in the wilderness. You walk outside, you're camping, and all of a sudden you see this bear, and your brain senses danger. So immediately you have a whole slew of systemic reactions. Your heart beats faster, you start to breathe faster, blood gets sent to your hands to stay and fight the bear, blood gets sent to your feet to get the heck out of Dodge, and stress hormones are being released in your body, which takes away vital function from your immune system, your ability to detox, and even your gastrointestinal tract. And when you're chronically ill, you can have that same response. It's like living with a bear all the time. The fight or flight mechanism takes place in the limbic system. And that's why we often refer to the chronic stress response as limbic system hypersensitivity. As you can see here, the limbic system sits right underneath the cerebrum. It's also responsible for learning, memory, fear, regulating emotions, sexual behavior, and survival mechanisms. We have the amygdala, which processes fear, the hippocampus, which forms and stores new memories. The hypothalamus, which regulates the endocrine system and the autonomic nervous system. It's also responsible for your fight or flight mechanism. We have the thalamus, which is responsible for your motor and sensory systems, so what we see, think, and feel. And we also have the cingulate gyrus, which regulates pain and emotion. In Vital Side, we specifically target all 5 of these structures. We'll learn to change our associations, form and store new memories, mentally rehearse, and do all of this through changing our thoughts, emotions, and our behaviors. This teaches your brain to become less stressed by rewiring the limbic system and creates a better functioning environment for your organs and your immune system. This is all really great information, right? But how can it actually help you? This can help you to learn, grow, and improve. It can help to change your perspective and what neural pathways you're taking. It can empower you to move forward and achieve optimal health. And it can also help you to break old habits that have been formed through chronic illness. Training your brain takes place through a series of practices that interrupts the limbic system's chronic stress cycle. We train our brain through thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Throughout this program, you'll be watching videos much like this and also interacting with me to uncover your vital side. For more information, please visit my website, www.vital-side.com, and there you can learn more about the services I offer. You don't have to do this alone. For many people, this is brand new information, and if you're that person, it's okay. Now you have a basic framework for how the brain changes and what positive changes you can make to your brain. One of my favorite parts of Vital Side is being surrounded by a community of people who are all focused on healing. That is the loudest thought in their heads, and it's wonderful to be part of that supportive and uplifting community.
Before Vital Side, I didn't feel like I was living my life to the fullest. I was really held back by my anxiety, my fatigue, and my digestive issues, and just wasn't able to do a lot of the things I had always enjoyed doing, like socializing with my loved ones, working out, and eating my favorite foods. And by completing the Vital Side program, I was able to be consistent and make some really great changes into my life. And I'm now able to tolerate a lot more of the foods that I was not able to eat before. I can work out now, I've gone hiking, and I've been able to travel and just spend a lot more time with my friends and family and make some new friends as well. And so I just feel a lot more in control and confident, and am able to live my life now the way that I want to be living.
I met Lindsay Mitchell through Vital Side and began hearing more about neuroplasticity and the work that she does and the retraining of the brain. And at first, honestly, I was skeptical of what it is. I tend to be a late joiner to things anyway, but I decided to go ahead and dive in. And I started with the morning meditation. And the very first morning that I listened to it, I wasn't prepared for what an emotional experience it was. There was a ton of joy in it and celebration in it as well. And there's this other moment in it where she has you like walk into this future self, if you will. And when I did it mentally in my head, when I did what she said, it was just electrifying, if you will, inside of me to walk into that future reality, and it was spectacular. And so I began listening to that at least 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes more, for several weeks at a time, and it has been a really tremendous way for me to start my morning.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I've been doing Vital Side for several months now, and I've noticed many changes in my life. One big change is when I used to take a shower, I would have burning skin afterwards, and that is completely gone. I also used to have many food sensitivities to things like dairy, gluten, and eggs, and those are also completely gone. And I am very grateful and excited for these changes and look forward to more that will be happening.
The hardest part is getting started, taking the initial leap, the first step to making a complete change to your life, saying the words, "I'm all in." And that decision makes all the difference in the world. If you can get on the other side of the story you've been told, or the one that you've been telling yourself, "I'm weak, I will never heal, I'm broken." If you can get on the other side of fear, what lies ahead of you is something so incredible. The Vital Side program is designed to educate you on ways to make positive changes to your brain that benefit your health, and you'll be given daily exercises that support those changes and produce those benefits. For Vital Side to work, you will need to commit to completing these daily exercises for about 30 minutes to an hour a day for 6 months. You're also going to have to make some lifestyle changes. To create new neural networks in your brain takes time, repetition, and change. Vital Side works best when you make a time commitment to yourself and your healing journey, and agree that you must make a change today to see progress tomorrow. To me, vitality means strength. It means expressing myself in a lively way. It means having all aspects of my life, physical, mental, and emotional components, operating in balance in the best way they possibly can. But to truly regain your vitality or to experience it for the first time in your life, the time is now. Not everyone who calls is a good fit for the Vital Side program. My goal is to save you time from programs that don't work and drain your time and money. With Vital Side, I provide you with the resources you need to move forward. Together, we can retrain the brain, heal, and thrive.